Great.
Hey guys, let me turn the sound up. There we go. Ty's coming. Ty's here with me in person. He's just peeing, not to put him on the spot, but I'm so excited about this class. I've practiced it like 2 or 3 times. You're gonna have to bear with. I'm super nervous, but I'm nervous before everyone. Full disclosure, Tyler's always making fun of me because I'm like, I've practiced it and but then we get going and it's such a blast that I forget that I was nervous from the beginning. But this one is special. So I'm really happy that you're here. If you're watching it after the fact, thank you guys so much for checking it out. But this is really the official start of our second semester because we're going to be using your work. We're going to look at published work as well, to counterpoint some of the work by aspiring writers, but this is the stuff that I've been looking forward to the most, getting, our hands dirty with work by you guys, by subscribers. And we got so many great submissions. I really can't even wrap my head around it. Literally like, we got full comics, we got scripts, we got partials, we got fulls, everything. So it was just fantastic. And the submissions, looking through them, it was just really like so many that I feel like could be published and could be really strong as they are already. So I'm really thrilled. Give people a few minutes to filter in. Does anyone have any questions before we start? Let's see. Let me get my chat thing up. How do I open the chat over here, Ty? Can't see. We have Ben up there, I'll say. Yeah, hold on one sec. There we go. Great. There we go. I can see everyone. Once. Hello. Awesome. Hello. Great. You want to just mute that? Awesome. Great. You want to just mute that? There we go. Let me make sure you're.
Oh, sorry.
You good?
That. Yeah.
All right. So does anyone have any questions before we start? I want to give people, a few people said they were going to come in, filter in a little bit late tonight. Anything before we start on anyone's mind that I can answer really quick?
Just give me a sec.
Q&A.
How was your LA Comic-Con?
Oh, it was awesome. It was, it was a blast, man. I was with Greg the whole time, and I brought my kid. I brought Emmett, who's 11, and I've never been on a trip with him before, just the two of us, because he's right at the age when I started taking Jack, our older kid. And we went to Disneyland, which was unbelievable. I'd never been, actually. I'd only been to Disney World. And the rides were all different. He had I just spoiled him till he threw up, basically. So it was great. And the fans at LA Comic-Con were fantastic. And I mean, I am always surprised that we still have the lines we have after all these years, but thank you guys so much. It's a pleasure to show up and get to say hi to so many of you. So it was a blast. And it says, if we want the best chance of our work being used for class, should we send our pieces one at a time or send multiples? You can do either one. We're going to be looking at stuff all year long. I know what we're going to use next month for our big piece. What we're going to try and do each month is do like one longer piece, like one piece that's sort of the standard comic length, about 22 pages. And then one short piece, because I feel like short pieces are important to look at. Tonight, we're looking at a great one called the Cold Secret of Titan Station, Cold Dark Secret of Titan Station, where I feel like anthologies and short pieces are often like your entry point into comics as creators. So I want to look at those as a sort of an art form and really try and make an effort to include them. So we do one long, one short. Okay. So just sort of diving in, what I want to do before we really get going is to kind of prep you on how the class will run in this new format. So I won't do it every month. I promise it'll just be this one. But give me 5 minutes to kind of walk through it. So I've taught a lot of workshops over the years. I love doing it. I taught it like a bunch of different schools, colleges, grad schools, high school, everything. And I taught for a good 8 or 9 years before I had to take a break before this. So my favorite part is this. My favorite thing, honestly, like more than anything else, is looking at student work and working as a team to try and get something from where it's really strong already to where it can, where it can really, really shine. So the way that I feel class is most beneficial to you guys is if we kind of follow a few things, right? So I've said them in the post, but just to remind you, because there's going to be more participation, I'm going to count on you guys now to say more things as we go. I'm going to look at your chat over here. I'm going to look at your comments as we're going. I want you to chime in. Is when we have a piece submitted, the first thing you have to know is that all your tastes, all your sort of proclivities towards one kind of writing or another kind of writing, they go out the door. You're an objective reader, and the whole goal is to help something become better on its own terms. So if something's a romance story or a comedy, you don't like those, doesn't matter. The goal isn't to try and make it more like a story you would like. Oh, I like darker stuff. Can we make it darker? It's not that at all. It's figuring out first and foremost what this piece is trying to do. What's its goal? Or what's its purpose? And then given that thing, that foundational answer that you give yourself after reading it, everything else is built on that. So given what it's going for, what's working really well? What's strong about it? What's helping it be effective on its own terms? Okay. So there's a very big difference between what's good about it and what's good about it, given what it's trying to do. What's good about it can be something that's really subjective. It's all subjective, but I mean, it can be subjective regardless of what the thing is trying to do. You could just say, oh, I really like this, this joke or these lines or that. But the joke might not be funny given what the story is. Maybe humor doesn't fit this piece. Do you know what I mean? So it's all about, is this something that strengthens the piece on the terms that it's set for itself? Thirdly, what's not working so well? What are some things that could be improved? And then fourthly, and probably most importantly, how do we do that? How do we kind of take it from where it could be to where it's going? And the purpose of looking at student pieces this way for me is to really make sure you guys understand that coming into a workshop, I know this term gets thrown around a lot, but it's the truth. This is like a safe space for you guys to submit work where, people that submit work are trusting you, the other people in the class, to help them make it better. If they're writing something they care about, they're putting their heart on the page. It might seem funny on the surface. It might be a horror story, whatever it is, but they care about it. And so for them to give it to you, it's a level of vulnerability that I want you to respect and come in and say, I'm going to help make this thing as good as I can on its terms, right? So for that to happen, you got to sort of look at it in terms of its own mission, and that not about your own taste. You check all of that at the door. You check your politics at the door. You check everything at the door. Okay. It might be a story that has political leanings that you don't agree with. The point is not to argue its political leanings. The point is to help it be better on its terms. Okay. So anyway, the thing I'm trying to say is that setting those guardrails and that kind of a sort of compass for the class has always been like just the best sort of North Star when I've started a workshop. Okay. I want you all to feel really good submitting work. I want you all to feel really good about critiquing work. And I want you to see this as a place where we're all trying to help each other improve. That's the goal. You know what I mean? So I'm really, really excited about it. Okay. So that's the sort of rubric we'll use. And now let's just dive right in. Let's start. God, I really am like more excited about this than almost any class. So I want to thank you guys also for submitting. So the first story we're going to look at, it's Palooka. It's by writer Casey Van Heel. Casey is actually working tonight. He's bartending, but he's going to chime in at the end of the class. He said he'd step out for a second and Zoom with us. So, and the second piece we're going to look at, The Cold Dark Secret of Titan Station. It's by Ben O'Grady and Max Deloglio. And Ben is here, and Ben will chime in at the end. The way that I generally do a workshop is that I don't have the person being critiqued speak or chime in until the end. That's the way I was taught. I think it's much more effective because once you get in and you start arguing back and forth about what you were going for, it kills the discussion. And I really feel as though sort of hearing everybody's takes on it is also instructive, even if they get it wrong. If I get it wrong, it means maybe you're not doing something as clearly or as sort of pointedly as you could in the piece. All right. So let's dive in. All right, let's start with Palooka. So as we go forward, I've mentioned this to you before, but I'll start looking at scripts that you guys are sending in. We'll start doing that too. But right now, we're going to look at pieces that are more kind of full in length. So let me give you a primer again, really quick on a couple things before we jump in. All right. Here, tried and true my old 3-act structure thing that we spilled water on, and it never. Well, I took a picture of it while it was still wet. That's why it looks like that. But okay, so a first issue. The thing that I look for in a first issue is vision and voice. Okay, from page 1, you should really, and I've said this in class when I talked about beginnings, our very first class, essentially, you should have sort of a striking sense of purpose and identity on that first page. Like when I pick something up and I see this writer is writing with confidence, the art style fits, everything is pointing me towards something. Okay, now that could be a cold open that establishes that this is going to be the biggest, most epic alien invasion story ever. That's fine. That's telling me what it is. It's telling me it has a vision and scope and ambition. It could be something that sets the stage tonally in a very different way, like Tom King's Vision we looked at, right? Really, really slow build, really kind of ambient, creepy, unsettling, kind of long intro before we meet the characters, before we meet the protagonists, right? That's fine too. All of those things are announcing to me as a reader, this has a sense of what it is, of what its goals are, all of that. Okay, so that's what I look for first. And then structurally, as we start moving into the issue, and I'm telling you this because this is kind of the rubric by which we're going to be looking at these pieces. As you start to move into the issue, you recognize that generally you're going to be hitting this zone here, right? The first act. Sometimes when you do a short, which we'll be talking about later, the most common way to do a short is to kind of zone in on something up here and to recap all of this stuff. You guys can see my pointer, right, Ty?
Yep.
You can see the little cross here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. So a short, generally, like a lot of the time, you're somewhere up here where there's an emotional epiphany or a plot epiphany. Usually the emotional epiphany happens here at the end of Act 2, when everything is destroyed and the character realizes before they go off to the climax what it is that makes them who they are, what's strong about them, or blah, blah, blah. And then the climax here sometimes has the kind of plot twist, I am your father, or it has the plot twist, the villain is actually Tafiti herself, Taka is Tafiti. It's this moment can have a plot twist where, everything is shaken up, but it's not generally an emotional reversal for the character at that point. They're already in a bad place at that point in some way, up to that. So sometimes it can have emotional stakes, but a lot of the time it's that sort of a math. Here's the kind of the biggest emotionality. Here's sort of, guess what? The villain rips his face off and it's not who you thought in some way, but it's still, sort of,
Oh, Dan, throwing a quick question in chat. Can you remind us what PONR and AHL stand for?
Absolutely. I'll go through this. So this is 3-act structure again. So when you're doing about a 120-page story, or so, like a 6-issue arc, or a screenplay, which is 120 pages, Act 1 over here is about 30 pages, right? It's about a quarter of it. Then about a half of it is Act 2. Here it's about 60 pages. And then Act 3 is here about 30 pages, okay, roughly. Again, not everything follows this, but this is kind of the standard architecture. About 15 pages in, or 15 minutes into a movie or a TV show about the same in an episode that's like 40 minutes long, something will happen called the inciting incident, right? I have here. And I'm going to go into this in more detail in a second. I'm going to break it down in an Act 1 sort of, in an Act 1 sort of detail thing, a new thing I drew myself, you'll see in a sec. But the inciting incident is when something comes into your protagonist's life that essentially gives them the opportunity to set off on a journey in one way or another, okay? Then Act 2 starts around page 30. Here, point of no return happens about halfway through the story. It's when you're halfway through the movie, halfway through your arc. It's when your character generally has a decision to go forward that will mean there's no going back after that. Once you go this way, once you turn this corner, everything will change on the other side. So this is where in Titanic, Rose sleeps with Jack and decides she's going to leave forever. This is where you know, I'm trying to think of like in my stuff, I was thinking of this is in Court of Owls after the Labyrinth, when he decides he's going to go after them and bring them down once and for all. This is in like, you know, what did I see recently? Like in Avatar, when Jake Sully sides with and I haven't seen the second one yet. I'm seeing it this weekend. I'm excited, but when Jake Sully decides he's gonna not follow his orders and sides with the natives, the Na'vi or whatever they're called. I haven't seen it in a while. Anyway, so it's a point from which your character makes a decision and there's no going back on this side. There's no going back to what was things are the way the things being the way they were before. All right. AHL is all hope is lost. At the end of Act 2, usually something devastating happens that makes your character feel they can no longer go on. Okay. This is where Moana like loses Maui because she got too confident. This is where Rapunzel, we watch a lot of Disney movies in my house. I have a 3-year-old. When Rapunzel entangled realizes that, you know, she thinks that Flynn tricked her and that her mother was right all along and she should stay in her tower forever. This is where they realize they've used all their weapons and the Terminator is still alive. This is where, you know what I'm saying? It's always that. It's always like right before the character gets back up and decides, I'm going to go out there and do something to stop all this. And I have inner strength again. Okay. This is where Rose leaving the boat in Titanic thinks that Jack betrayed her and took the part of the ocean and whatever, and she's going down on the thing and that's it. And Jack is tied up in the, you know, they're taking Jack away and there's no saving him and so on. It's all that. It's like the terrible darkness before they come up to Act 3. Act 3 usually involves them going on a new form of their mission. And then there's the climax and then there's the sort of resolution. Does that track? Does that make sense? Okay. I can't see the comments while I'm in this share your screen thing, but
so far so good.
Great. So first issues in multi-issue arcs, whether it's 3 issues, you know, whatever it is, to 6 issues, usually deal with this section. Okay. If you only have 3 issues, a lot of the time you'll be starting somewhere here and kind of recap this spot and then do this, this, and this. Act 2 is usually what gets compressed. If you have 4 issues or 5 issues, that's the part that can kind of suffer a little bit. In a way that, you know, I have to do that when I do metal or that stuff where it needs these mega opening and closing acts. Sometimes the middle gets a little bit compressed and tossed off to some of the one-off to some of the tie-ins that then later get back included and you get it back in the elasticity. But generally, like when you have breadth or you have room, you're doing a creator own, this is kind of what your issue 1 is going to be. It's either going to kind of usually end somewhere around the inciting incident, Court of Owls, or Noctera ends at Act 1. Clear ends at when he finds out that his wife, his ex-wife, might have been murdered. It's the inciting incident. Night of the Ghoul ends at the inciting incident. The digital, the print ones have 2 issues in them, so they usually go further. They go to the end of Act 1 or whatever it is. Book of Evil, if you read that, the first issue ends right at the inciting incident, right here, where they discover what it is that could lead them forward. So ending around the inciting incident, or if you have room at the end where they set off to their journey at the end of Act 1, it's a very common, not in a bad way, but it's a very sort of common architecture for a first issue. Again, like the same way that all this is common architecture for all Western films, you know, again, some things really break from it. And I've said this to you before, but just in case, some movies like Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs or Memento, they break this stuff up. But what you realize when you watch the movie again is that these things are all there. They're just rearranged. So it's almost like they take it and they scramble the order, but the actual emotional anchors are all there, just in different ways. And in other movies like Avengers, which I've talked about as well, Endgame and that, they actually pass some of these beats through multiple characters, but the beats are all, the emotional notes are there. Sometimes they're just played through different instruments, through different characters in general, okay? So anyway, so it'll be here. This will be kind of where your issue 1 is, and this is what Palooka is. Palooka is dealing here. Okay, this is kind of where it is. All right, let me show you a slightly more detailed one. Okay, let me see here. All right, I got it. I got a new one. I made it just for this class. You can see. Here we go. Okay, so it looks kind of crazy. I was like asking Ty, I'm like, is it too busy? Is it too busy? Just bear with me. There's not everything on here is not crazy important, but I want to really break down Act 1 for you so that you can kind of understand what I'm talking about. Because one of the things I want you to know is like the stuff that came in, the reason that you can kind of figure out that there's something off with, they're not even off, but that there's slight room for improvement in some of it is because so much is working right. Okay. A lot of the time when you watch a TV show, it'll be like things are working really well. You know, you really love it. There's one or two things you can feel are off. And I'm trying to give you the tools and the language to articulate what it is that's off mechanically that you can kind of tighten and go forward with. But these are all slight adjustments. This isn't like something massive is wrong. This is everything's working well. So you can kind of see like, oh, because it's so effective, these little things are off. That's why I'm getting this detailed. Okay. So this whole thing is Act 1. See, it's Act 1 here. My toolbar isn't in your way, right? You don't see this, right? Okay, so I see a toolbar. It's bothered, whatever. Act 1, okay? This is 30 pages about, right? Or let's say the comic book 20 pages, all right? It's as far as I can get usually if I'm really being ambitious as to the character sets off at the end of Act 1. It's hard to get all the way there in just 20 pages, but usually you get here. This is the inciting incident. This is about, you know, in a movie, 15 pages, in a comic, let's say 20, okay? This part, not with a cold open, like let's say you do a cold open and you're like, 1,000 years ago, something was buried at the bottom of the ocean. Great, that's plot, that's totally fine. Again, that gives me a sense of voice, of vision. Your comic is gonna be epic, it's gonna span thousands of years. That's what you're about. You know, actually, I'm gonna just spend 3 pages setting up a town, describing it. Great, voice, vision, I get it. Your thing is about place. It's about something about this area. It's about, you know, the kind of the contextual elements of the story that are going to kind of seep in and be important. Totally cool. But the bulk of it is going to be this, right? It's going to be characterization. This whole area is characterization and world building. But this area in particular at the beginning is going to be, what is it that your character is struggling with? Okay, I've said it before, but characterization isn't who your character is. Okay, Spider-Man is Spider-Man, but when you start at Homecoming, like the movie Homecoming, what is this part about? It's not about who Spider-Man is, right? It's about where he is in his arc. Where's Peter? Peter wants to be bigger than the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in Homecoming. He wants to get bigger than that. Who is, you know, Rose in Titanic? This is someone who feels trapped and feels she's going to her death if she gets to America on this boat, and so she's going to jump off the boat. You know what I mean? This is building. Where is your character on their arc? What is it they're struggling with, and how far are they, or how adamant are they about overcoming that or not? You know what I mean? It's where they are on the sliding scale of the thing they're going to be struggling with. Okay, you can see the comments. I can't. Is everyone kind of getting this? You guys feeling okay?
All right, let's see, thumbs up here.
This is Batman is feeling overconfident in the Court of Owls and feels he knows Gotham so well that nothing could surprise him. Okay, this is where your character is on their arc. All right, then something happens that opens the door for your character. Okay, in horror, it's usually a thing that's dreadful that makes them feel like they don't want to go on a journey of some kind. In drama or in you know, heroic stories, it's usually something that allows them to go on a journey that they've been wanting to go on in some way, right? So in again, in Titanic, it's her meeting Jack, who says, you know, meet me her meeting Jack is the inciting incident here, and her kind of being attracted to him and meeting him and that. In, you know, Court of Owls, it's the Dick Grayson being called out as the murderer, because it's the Court of Owls claims that they're behind it, and Batman won't believe that that's even possible. So he decides he's going to investigate a little bit more, but he's fighting it. He's resisting the idea that they exist. Now, usually from this point to this point here, This is really crucial, okay? This is where your character is either adamantly trying to get out and follow this thing, the white rabbit of whatever, and something is standing in their way. This is like Moana wanting to leave, everybody telling her no. This is, you know, in the Disney movies, that's the classic thing. Rapunzel wanting to leave, her mother saying no, and gaslighting her. This is We Have Demons. Lamb is really resistant and feels like, I don't want to be a part of this. People are telling her, yes, you should be. That's the opposite thing. Okay. In a lot of movies, in Aliens, Ripley finds out that, you know, another terraforming area is destroyed, and there's a beacon, and they want to send her back, and she says no, 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 but she has nightmares, and so she decides to go. So your character can resist the call, or they can decide they really want to do the call, and either something's pushing down and stopping them if they want to, or something's pushing them and forcing them, even though they don't want to investigate. Horror is usually this one, something forcing them to do it, even though they don't want to. Drama is usually the opposite, something standing in the way, even though they want to do it. Okay? Everything track?
Yep.
And then at the end of Act 1, they set off. Now that's the kind of, again, the basic architecture. Doesn't mean you have to follow that. A lot of stories don't necessarily follow that. So none of that is to say you have to do it this way. This is just to give you what's expected, or what's kind of the most sort of baked in Western storytelling kind of conventions, to give you the tools to build. I'm trying to say to you, build your own custom car, man. I'm just trying to tell you, here's how an engine works. Here's how, you know, the clutch and this works, that works, everything, like, and, you know, but build what you want. Like, if you don't want it, if you want to make it so the wheels are gigantic and it's going to blow out, you know, go 110 mile, great, go for it. I'm just trying to give you the basic anatomy of it. Okay. And you can kind of evolve, play God, and make whatever creature you want. Okay. So this is what I'm going to be looking for. Okay. This to here. And as this is happening, you want to really show right before the inciting incident. I think a lot of times you do want to show how your character is sort of painfully kind of dealing with or resisting whatever it is that is in their way. This part is important to feel the pain and to identify with your character in a way that's really emotional. Okay. So now let's look at Palooka. All right. I'm going to zip over, and then Ty, will you just resend me,
Kingdom Come the Closet?
yes, exactly. See, you finish each other's sentences.
Yes.
Sandwiches. Yes. I can't believe you just froze and referenced me. Wait, what happened? I screwed it up. Here, let me do it again. Sorry, guys. Give me one sec. I'll pull it back up. Preview. So I have 3 kids sick, one after another here. It's been crazy. So literally, my little guy Quinn got sick, and then I got it from that. Here's Palooka. I got it from him, and then here we go to the beginning. And my then my 15-year-old got it and was sick, and now Emmett has it and is sick. I keep doing stupid shit here. That's fine. Here we go. Single scroll. Okay. First of all, great opening with all of the cool design. So I'm always going to assume that you read what I'm giving you. So I'm not going to like recap the whole thing, but just in case, what I try and do is I want it to be, if you didn't get a chance, I know people have busy lives and kids and that, it will always be a lot more helpful to you if you read the stuff, but I'll walk you through. So essentially Palooka is a, not satirical, but humorous, but heartfelt story.
It's a pastiche.
Yes, about a kind of down on his luck wrestler who's always seen as the heel. He's always, designated to play the bad guy because of the way he looks back in the 1960s. And he kind of longs to be a hero. And it takes place in a world, surprisingly, and, originally also in a fresh way, where superheroes exist, where original superheroes created for the comic exist, like the Justice League and the sort of Legion of Doom, the Axis of Evil, and And the good guys have a group as well, the Mighty American and all of these guys. And so he's enamored of the Superman proxy of this world, the Mighty American, and he kind of longs to be a hero. Okay, so let's take a look, given the criteria that I was telling you about, like at the beginning of the story, and see all that. First of all, what it's about is, okay, so right off the bat, does it have voice and does it have vision? The nuns at the orphanage used to talk about God's plan, how every little boy had a special purpose. Some boys were smart, so they'd become doctors. Other boys were handsome, so they'd become movie stars. All right, so from the beginning, the art is matching the voice. Like the voice here is, I can tell it's like, you know, not tongue in cheek, but it's very warm. It's kind of, it feels like kind of a big goon in a fun way. But it's looking at this hero and I'm thinking, oh, is he the guy? Is he the guy? Wally, we love you, right? And then it turns it on its head. I ain't got any of those. So I asked the nuns, what's God's plan for me? And here he is, right? I'm Morty Q. Suggs, the most hated man in pro wrestling. Boo, boo, boo. So by the end of the first page, I get that we're looking with kind of affection at the hero. And meanwhile, he's this guy, right? He's the guy at the end who's like, no, I'm this guy. Boo, boo, boo. Right off the bat, we're getting a sense of what it's about. I'm getting a sense of tone. I'm getting a sense it's funny, it's exaggerated, but it's sincere, right? And it goes on. And then as it happens, he's playing too hard, right? He's wrestling too hard. The good guy is sort of saying to him, stop, you know, you're supposed to lose. And he's not. He's going all in because he's upset, right? He keeps going on. Well, you know, the nun said to him, God works in mysterious ways, but it didn't seem that mysterious to me, right? I was born big and tough and very, very mean. And he's like, whatever you do, don't call me stupid. And the guy's like, you dumb, whatever, you know, calm down, Suggs. Well, you know, what are you like? You know, the wrestling was fake. Wrestling's fake, you idiot. And he's like, run. And then he beats him up. Not again, Morty, right? The ref says, wham, he kind of breaks him, you know, boo, boo, boo. God put me on this earth to lose. You know, you're going to catch hell for this, you idiot. And then he's back in the locker room. And as he's getting kind of berated, and he's like, I'm there to put on a good show. And this guy's like, no, you're not. You're there to lose when I say, and you're there to win when I say, and so on. This woman comes in. He hopes she's, you know, there for him. But of course, she's there for the hero. And she smacks him for beating her boyfriend up. So we're getting all of this is great character building, right? All of this is immediately like, you're doing the thing I was looking for in that first pre-inciting incident section. What is the character dealing with? He wants to be a hero. He wants to be looked at differently than he is. And he's not, right? He's looked at this way. He's looked at as this kind of always the loser, always the bad guy. He wishes that he has a nice woman waiting for him. He goes home and Miss Scagnetti, his landlord, is hitting on him, trying to get him to come into her apartment that looks like a sex dungeon, essentially, where she would probably keep him prisoner or whatever. He turns her down, goes back to his place, and essentially, like, you know, watches TV for the night. He's lonely. The next morning, though, we see he's like, there is one thing that I collect, right? And it's the Mighty American. And here's where we learn, world building wise, it's a world of superheroes. Okay, the Mighty American saves Mother. And we get this big splash. It's the first splash, right? So even this, what is this telling me emotionally? Splash, right? It's showing me that this is important to this character. It's showing me that this is the first time we're getting one of these big epic things like this. In his mind, this is how he sees the Mighty American, right? And all of this. He's a hero who smashes, you know, he's from a planet that was taken over by fascists and he's here to fight for freedom. And he's punching Hitler and he fights for freedom for all of us, right? And then as the comic goes on, is this track? Am I going too fast, Ty? What are people saying? I want to make sure everyone's
People
good.
are following. People are also very much complimenting the great work that's been done here.
Right? So all of this is working. All of it. The tone is confident. It's funny, but it's also, you know, vulnerable and sincere. The character's voice is, I think the character's voice is spot on. I really enjoy it. There are idiosyncrasies to it that are great. And you're not afraid to be funny and exaggerated. And here, this guy's kind of picking on him. You know, he's saying like, you know, don't just stand there, you big gawking dumb. And he says, run. And then just about as they're about to fight, a cab comes smashing on him, on this asshole, because look, or you'll get crushed by the jackhammer. Here comes the bad guys, right? Also, by the way, we learn it's the 1960s back there when he's looking at the, sorry, I want to point this out because I'm going to come back to it. They say he's from an alien world. Da 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 da. Where's the thing, Kennedy? Oh yeah, slow. Look, nope, slow night. Just commies and Kennedy. So it's clearly the early 60s, right? Okay, here we go. Run for your lives. You get crushed by the jackhammer. Stop or we'll shoot. Action. Here's your action, right? Shows the big stakes, the big stage. It's going to be a big superhero comic, right? Here they come, ping, ping, ping. And then, all of a sudden, look who comes into the mix. More superheroes, the Golden Gladiator, right? And he gives the origin stories of them. We get another great splash, right? Superheroes are larger than life. The Silver Sheriff. And we get this awesome, sort of origin stories about both of them. We hear about them, and it's all like, it sounds like 60s golden age, great comic stuff. And then as they're fighting, all of a sudden, you'll never get away with this. The Axis of Doom will, and here come the bad guys, and all of a sudden, here he is, the Mighty American, right? My hero. Mighty American. Do you fear retaliation from the Axis of Doom? And then he's running over. I gotta meet him. I gotta meet him. I love you. Then he's like, I love you, you idiot. And he flies away. All right. I'm gonna come back to this moment. So then as it goes down, he's angry here, right? He's angry. He's doing it all over again. You almost broke my hand, you stupid, because he won't stop, right? Not, damn it, not again, Morty. He's going to do it again. He's going to beat the guy up because he's unhappy with his own life. But now we get the plot. Somebody's following him. There he is, right? So without going too into it, what happens is he's approached by an old friend who's strangely bigger than he used to be. And the old friend says to him, listen, I got something better than wrestling. And he takes him out. And he talks to him and he says, listen, we have this, we have a way to use a machine from the Mighty Americans' home planet to give people superpowers. And you were always able to take a punch, and your body, we think you can handle it, right? So he takes him in to the secret hideout. There it is, come, welcome to the superhero gimmick. You know what I mean? So here we go. Here's the machine. You see somebody getting zapped and turned into a superhero and taken out. And he goes in, he's going to be out for about 20 minutes. You're up, Morty. So he goes in, I vouch for you because you're strong. You're going to be able to do it. Works better than vitamins, brother. And then rip, no more, no more losing, no more booing. All this is good. No, and this is the emotional tension. No more Morty, Morty Q Suggs, the most hated man in wrestling, da da da. But then when he comes out, the surprise is the hook. Welcome to the Axis of Doom. They actually turned him into a super villain, not a superhero, right? God damn it. And it's great. It's called a heinous heel turn, the next one. Terrific. I love the ending. I love the idea that he thought and look at these villains. It's like, straight out of 60s comics, the hook and everything. It's great. So essentially they turned him into the thing he's even, more, he hates even more than sort of what he was before, an extreme version of what he didn't like about himself, right? So it's a great start. So where that is that's, without sharing two things at once, that's essentially, if you were doing your arc, that takes you up to the inciting incident, right? From here, he's going to decide what he needs to do. Is he going to be a villain? Is he going to be a hero? Is he going to side with them? And then he's going to make some decision about, I'm going to bring them down even though I'm a villain, or whatever it is, like, from here. But this gets us really nicely to sort of the inciting incident of the whole thing. Okay. So what's working well? All the things that, so given what it's a not tongue in cheek, but it's like a humorous, over the top, but
love letter.
Yeah, a love letter to superheroes. It's sincere, it's heartfelt, take. It's not ironic, take on a character who longs to be as great as his sort of superhero idols, and yet is only ever seen as a loser. And he participates in wrestling, kind of a theatrical sort of microcosm of the thing that he wants to be in real life. All of that tracks great, So given that, and given what the comic is trying to do, what's working well? Like I said, I think the voice is great. I think the humor is great. I think the way that you character build Casey at the beginning, showing us through narration what he's going through, counterpointing that with the wrestling, just the humor of him beating on the guy and the guy calling him stupid, and then him going all out and the ref yelling at him, all of it, the Scagnetti. It has this real confidence about not being afraid to be cartoonish and yet also being open-hearted in a lot of ways. So all of that's working really well. I think the plot is great. I think the twist is great, given it's all there. Like if I read it, I'd be like, this is a really promising first issue. Okay. So given all the things that are there, does everyone have anything else that they want to bring up that I'm not sort of hitting on? I'm going to go back to the chat for a second and then I'll jump back to this. Let me stop share.
Ken Hazlitt says that he loves the general concept and character designs. The first person narration is also very much working for this.
First person it's a really smart choice. You want to be held, when in a world, usually in a world that's a complicated world building situation, but also when you have a character you really want people to fall in love with in an easy, fast way, narration is always a really good choice. It holds their hand, it brings them in, it gives you a very quick sense of personality, all of that. Usually stories that don't use narration, the immediate feeling is there's a distance, you're holding them at bay. Horror often holds you at bay that way. You don't see tons of narration a lot of the time in horror. Comedy you do, big sci-fi you do a lot of the time, but sci-fi can also be cold and hold you off. But it's a tonal thing. It's the goals of your story. Okay. So let me say now, going into some of the things. One of the things I would say, I agree. Somebody said that it is a little hard to read with the captions in blue. I like the idea that they're not just pure white, but going for like a yellow or something that kind of brings them out a little bit. But let's talk about some of the things that maybe could be a little stronger. I'm going to point these out again. And this is only by virtue of the fact that so much is working well to me already that I think is really, really strong in this. Okay. And by the way, just so you know, if you send stuff in, what I do is I always run it by the person I'm critiquing first. So I got on the phone. I texted with Ben, but because it was running out of time, I thought I'd have time to get on the phone with Ben, who's the writer of the Cold Dark Secret of Titan Station. But we texted back and forth about what I'm going to say and made sure that it's sort of appropriate for what he was going for. With Casey, we got on the phone. We went back and forth. I was like, this is what I want to say. And again, like, unless you say to me, like, that's really offensive to me or something, and I'll say, of course, I don't want you to be uncomfortable. I want you to be excited about being in workshop, or that's really upsetting to me. Otherwise I'm going to say what I think is working really well. And then what could be improved a tiny bit. Okay. So all of this is like okayed by the people there. So none of this is me going in there and criticizing something, because here's the other thing, guys, like, it's very easy to just point out things that don't work in something sometimes, like anything. You could be like, oh, I didn't like that in this movie, in Top Gun or this or whatever. But to contextualize that thing as to why it's not working because other things are working right. It sticks out because other things feel like they are functioning well. And to understand that is to understand the whole blueprint. You know what I mean? It's easy to just be like, oh, that didn't feel good, or I didn't like that thing. But if you say I didn't like that thing because what the thing was going for was all these things and it didn't fit, it's not just a matter of taste. You have an actual, constructive argument to make. The worst thing you do, like when you get a critique or a review that's like, I didn't like this, it's just, I didn't like this, I thought this was bad. It's like, tell me why, and I want to know. You can go as hard as you want, but but if you say to me, it didn't work because these things, this is what I thought you were going for, and these were the things that were effective, and that's why this stuck out, then I get it and I want to use it. You know what I mean? So anyway, all right. So let's go back over here. Let me show you something again with Palooka. Okay. So my one criticism, I'm going to go back to this for a second. A couple criticisms are with Palooka. I think this part is really, really strong. I have barely anything for this. Okay. It's this part right up to here that feels a tiny bit rushed. Okay. This. And what this does, this is right before he gets the chance at the machine. This is the part where I want a little bit more emotional suspense and a little bit more pain and joy at the idea, pain at his situation and joy at the idea he gets to suddenly break out of it before you twist the knife and show that he's becoming a villain. Okay. It's almost like this all takes its time. And then as soon as the guy comes in to offer the machine, it goes very fast. And sometimes that's a matter of just not having room in a comic. And that's totally fine. You make your choices. You're always going to be constricted. Sometimes something has to give. One part of it is going to, suffer in one way or another. And that's totally up to you to make those decisions. When I was doing death metal or metal, events never have enough room, that you never do, so you have to figure out what parts you're going to kind of compress and use tricks like narrate over, jump, do a forward jump, and then recap part of it. In between issues, have things that happened off panel. It's always like a matter of figuring out what you can leave on the cutting room floor to get to the biggest stuff. So again, this might just be a matter of choice. Can you close that door, Ty? It's just drafty. So for Palooka, here's what I'm saying. This part, building up to the idea that he wants to be good, but he doesn't feel like he ever is going to have the chance, is great. But the moments that would heighten this to me are, one, when he finally sees the mighty American, okay? And he saves that old woman for a second. Let's go to it, and I'll show you this part right here on this graph. But here, stop share screen. Here we go. Here's where it starts to see where I can this is where I start to think, come on, old lady, wake up. Right here, this, and then he was with the old lady, and he goes over to the like here. When he goes to the old lady, when all of it's happening here, this is a chance. This might be too extreme, but he does save her, or he pulls her out of the way, or he's with her at least after the car smashes. So there's a moment here where he's like, come on, old, come on, lady, wake up. He takes her out of the way and he saves her, right? There's a moment there to be like, for a moment, I felt almost like, one of my heroes, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden here comes, and then a real one showed up and I knew I wasn't, you're starting to heighten it. You're starting to say he's living out his dream a little bit here, right? But the bigger moment here, even bigger, imagine you do that and have him be like, he's starting to feel like a hero. And then the real hero showed up, he said, blam, and here they are. I just play one in a ring, but here they are. Wham, here comes Mighty American, right? This moment is fast. This is a key moment for me that could be slowed down. He goes to Mighty American, I love you, and he takes off. Now imagine for a second, Mighty American looked at him and for a split second thought he was a villain, you know what I mean? Because of the way he looks, or flashes through the Mighty American's eyes, some recoiling, some sense of like, thinks that he's coming at him like a bad guy, and he looks like a bad guy. And so even for a split second, slow that down. You had a page just show the Mighty American's eyes, like looking at him like he's a villain, and then softening and being like, thank you, and then flying away. That would kill him. It would crush him, right? It would make, him feel devastated that his hero looked at him the same way everybody else does. So then he goes into the ring. Now imagine that. Then he goes into the ring and he's beating the shit out of this guy. And he is so angry and depressed and so pissed off because of what just happened that just, stuck a knife right in his heart, that when this comes along, this opportunity, you beef it up. I got something better than wrestling here. Let me see if I can, there. Barkeep, 2 of your finest scotches, keep them coming. It's always business with you, Morty, da-da-da. You really know how to work a guy over if it wasn't for you. Here. I got something for you. And he says, Louis wanted to talk about the old, he wanted to talk about the old days, but I couldn't focus. I had butterflies in my stomach, just stay calm, Morty, and let me do all the talking. And he's saying essentially like, we want to offer you a spot at our table. And it starts to get, I'm not quite sure if he's saying spot at our table. Oh, okay. So he's a superhero. He's offering him a spot as a superhero. And then it clears up when he gets here and it says, Henry Hart, nice to see you. Don't mind me. Gary Grund. I was in the Minnesota League Cup there for wrestling in here. You better get your origin story in line. You better get your superhero gimmick. The secret brotherhood, blah, 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 professional wrestler, I can keep a secret. And then here, this is where we get it, how it all started. Here, sorry, I bet this machine is from the Mighty Americans world, brought here to help him make. So he's kind of speculating about this. He's not sure. He sees somebody go through it. Just back it up for a second. Okay. Let me just say, like, reimagine the scene with tiny tweaks where he's told all of this, where it's like, guess what? We have a machine from the Mighty American. It's built on the Mighty Americans DNA, and he secretly wants people to be able to join the International League of Heroes, or we're building sidekicks, people to help him out, that. And it's, we're on a secret mission for that. And it turns people into people like him, right? But not a lot of people can withstand it. That's the thing, like only certain physiologies. And I think you might be able to. And then, they're basically tantalizing him with the idea that he could be like the Mighty American. He could be his, he could be just like, like a sidekick to him. He could be somebody like him in that way. Think about how that, after being devastated by the look in the Mighty American's eyes, would then, if we did that, then would pull him forward like, oh my God, I can't wait for this. Jumps in there. And then as it goes, instead of no more taking dives, instead of it kind of being plot driven and fast, he could even imagine here for a minute, standing with the Mighty American, walking into the Hall of Justice proxy, thinking about like, oh my God, finally, and going back and thinking about like the old lady staring at him, the wrestlers staring at him, everybody cheering. He's the hero, no more boos, only cheers. And then he opens his eyes and they are cheering. But who's cheering? It's the Axis of Doom, because now he's one of them. Do you see what I mean? It's the slow emotional suspense. It's this. It's this. It's this part here. The pushing up and pushing down. It's the painful thing right before. You know what I mean? It's all of it. It's like the guy comes into his life and says, do you want, he's offering him essentially this, all of this stuff around here. You can push a little harder. You can push a little harder this way. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? Let me pull out of this so I can see.
Oh, no, Casey is here, by the way, so he is reading your very lovely comments.
Awesome, Casey. So I'm gonna let you in now for a second to chat. But basically, before you jump in, I just wanted to say, I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like what that is for me, it's like a tiny adjustment that would give more emotional, a slightly more emotional stakes and peak right before that moment at the end. You know what I mean? Casey, again, thank you so much for sharing everything with us.
Oh my God, thank you so much for everyone for reading it. And thank you for letting me be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to see it. Casey sent me more work. One of the things I want you guys to know is like, if we use your work and we go back and forth, or even if we don't, but you send stuff and we get in a conversation, I love to keep up with people. This isn't like we use your stuff and don't talk. My goal is to try and help you guys, and be, I'm super busy, but I try my best to be giving advice or to read anything else you want to send me if we start that. Same thing with the Black Jacket Club. I mentioned it, but I just want you to know, if you, again, like it's opening tomorrow. We don't have many spots. If you want to do it, it offers you office hours, which I have tomorrow. And you can come as many times as you want. Office hours, we talk about your work, all of that stuff. So anyway, but Casey, I was really overjoyed to get to talk to you the other day and to see the other stuff you're working on. And is there anything that I said? I want to give you a chance to respond or see if there's anything I was off with, or you feel is helpful or not helpful, anything at all.
No, it was just when we I just caught the very tail end of what you were talking about, and being able to add just a little extra scene and recalibrate and just set the table a little more, I guess.
Exactly.
Which is just like give a little bit more story. And it's one of those things when we were talking, I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. But yeah, that would have added just a little bit more. We would get a little bit more of Morty, a little bit more of Mighty American.
Yeah,
it was just the economy of like
the
amount of pages that, and I allotted myself, I guess,
But dude, being able to fit as much in and the world building in that you did. Oh, I had one more suggestion that I forgot. I wrote it down and I forgot, but I can tell it to you now. I love the fact that it's set in the early 60s, and you can do this with just some narration, but it's a time when, you use that, if you're setting it, then use that to heighten the sort of emotional conflict that Morty's going through. Like this, he could say when he's talking about, being a wrestler, or when he gets the paper, it's a time when he, we needed here, depending on how you're framing the 60s, when
Mhm.
people needed heroes more than ever, because it's the early 60s, it's civil rights, all of that. Or if you say,
Yeah.
it's a time when people looked up to heroes more than ever, Kennedy and Camelot, and, everyone was searching for heroes and bad guys, the commies. And, it was a time of
Yeah.
extreme good and evil, it seems, but that it heightens it. Like, just saying why you said it then, even in a few lines, will like up it.
No, and that makes total sense because you get there's the scene at the newsstand, so it could have easily just been folded in with a few more lines of dialogue, a little bit more conversation.
Yeah, and
No,
that's
I
it.
think
The thing
that's
that I
great.
said that you missed, and then I'll let you go too, is just that slight emotional build before Morty steps into the machine. That idea of him saying
Mhm.
essentially, if the machine is presented to him as an opportunity to become like the mighty American, and it is from his world, and he's
Oh,
lied
yeah.
to in a way that makes it more painful when you twist it, so that it's like,
Yeah.
oh, the machine is from that world, and guess what? We're on a secret mission from the mighty American. Maybe he saw you the other day and he actually thought you'd be perfect for it. And the fact that
Mhm.
he sees him out in the street, Morty thought that he rejected him. If you do the change that I mentioned, you can watch in the recording, in the archive when we record it. But I was saying in that
Mhm.
scene, if he goes towards the mighty American and the mighty American recoils because he thinks he's a villain because of the way he looks, it would devastate him. But then all of a sudden he hears from the guy who approaches him, actually, the mighty American side wants you to be a part of this, and like his hopes would go through the roof. And then he gets in the machine,
Yeah.
and while he's
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
machine, imagines himself as the hero, and then all of a sudden, but it takes more pages. It's totally something
Sure.
that, but it's in an ideal world. But again, the comic, if it came out just as it was, it'd be something I read and was like, this is damn fucking awesome debut issue. And it makes me really happy.
Oh, that's I love it. And like that's the coolest part about the whole community is being able to because you sit down at your keyboard and you're like you're on your own island. And you only have other friends if you have friends who like comedy or friends who are writers or if my goodly wife reads everything I write. So like I lean on her like an editor. And it's just nice to have people to help like bring that out, like help that bloom a little bit more. So that's like what's so cool about this is just talking to all of the whole class and the community is just that you can get that before like you're all in. You're like, oh, all right,
That's
it's
the way
done. Sorry.
I'm telling you, like that's the most valuable. I went to grad school for 3 years, and the most valuable thing about the whole thing wasn't the degree, it wasn't the teachers, it wasn't the connections. It was finally finding a community of people that I could trust to read my stuff and whose stuff I loved reading. And we were all helping each
Mhm.
other through a time when none of us knew if we'd make it, all of it, but you're going to stick together and try your best. And that finding a community is so paramount. So, again, and I'm part of it. I'm here, I'm part of the community. So please, like,
Mhm.
you and I will talk like next week. I'm going down to Florida to finish signing. Uh, uh, I'm doing a CGC signing, but I'm signing Black Jacket stuff. I'm seeing Greg down there. We're signing together,
Oh,
and
nice.
Tony
Awesome.
also. And yeah, so it should be really fun. But I'm there for one day, but then I'm back, and then I'm gonna hit you up next week to continue talking about your stuff. So
Cool.
thank you again,
Awesome.
brother.
Oh no, thank you guys. Thank you everybody. Like it's cool. It's fun to have just that sounding board
I'm so
because
glad.
it's like reading things like I find for me it's like you were just saying like reading other people's work that excites you also you trick yourself into then doing the work you weren't going to do because you're like writer's block. But I read something you put down, I'm like, oh man, like I'm excited to like get back on the keyboard or like dig through my stack of notes or whatever.
That makes me really happy, dude. That's exactly the way. That's exactly the way it should be. So all right, I will. I mean, the whole community, not just me. Um,
Oh.
uh, I'm a new. Jump, and then I want to show them really quick, like in 5 minutes, what I'm talking about in Kingdom Come,
Mhm.
like the kind of thing that I think is a template you could use for a certain that moment that you could strengthen, and then I'm going to
Yeah.
jump over and look at the Cold Dark Secret of Titan Station. So, but I'll hit you up next week.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, brother.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, take care, man. Save a
I
drink
will.
for me.
Oh, always.
All right.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks,
So let
guys.
me pop
Bye.
over. I'm going to show you guys just really quick because I want to get to Titan Station and have plenty of time. But one of the best comics, you know, it's my wife's Pinterest. It's buying stuff for Christmas. Like, is there anything terribly embarrassing up here? No, there's not.
Pinterest is probably the worst one.
Pinterest is probably the worst one. eBay is all me buying baseball cards for my kid. Anyway, all right. So I'm not going to go through the whole comic. I don't want to waste your time. It's more important to look at student stuff. But Kingdom Come, one of the best comics of the 90s, and it's fantastic. It's about a new generation of heroes that comes along and is brutal and doesn't give a shit about ethics, and the old heroes come back to stop them. And it's told from the point of view of a pastor who's given Wesley Dodd, the Sandman's powers of vision, and the Spectre visits him. I'm not going to make you dizzy and go through it, but this is all the character building stuff that we saw in Palooka. World building. It's a world like I said about the 60s being a context through which you heighten the emotionality of the conflict. It was a time of heroes, blah, blah, blah. Same thing here, except the opposite. Now it's a time of disillusionment. It's a time where there's no faith in humanity anymore. You're walking through a world where you're seeing all that. Heroes are now just, ciphers being used in like Planet Hollywood stuff and so on. But I'm going to show you this, okay? So in the section, I'm not trying to make you dizzy. After he sees Superman has retired and isn't coming back, and Wonder Woman approaches him and says, you don't know what just happened. These new heroes, they fought with Magog. They were fighting out in the Kansas plains, and one of them was fighting with Parasite, and he was a nuclear man, and a nuclear explosion happened and killed 1 million people. And you still don't want to come back and save people? And he's like, I don't. And he stays there. And so in this moment here, after he says, it's one of the best moments, you think he's out in Kansas and Wonder Woman hits a button and you realize he's just in the Fortress of Solitude, like pretending to be out in Kansas. It's so great. So great. And she's just like, I look at you and she's a goddess of truth. All I look at you and see nothing but lies. And then she takes off after being like, she shows him what happened. This is, sorry to go so fast, but she shows him what happened, takes off. And then here we go back to the city and Superman refuses to go. Wonder Woman leaves. And then the Spectre shows the main character. All of this, the heroes don't know what to do anymore. They're all kind of just doing their own thing, but they're just, living in their old worlds and not coming together to protect people from anything. And so it's raising the stakes and raising the pain. And he's like, what's become of Batman? Batman has robots and keeps his city protected. But it's raising the pain. He gets so angry, right? That's all you have to show me. You're supposed to be a messenger of hope. And he's like, at no time did I promise you hope. This is that beat. This is that, you look at the Mighty American and he looks back and sees you and you don't and sees a villain. This is that pain when he's beating that guy in the Morty is beating that guy up in the ring. This is that moment that makes them so desperate for an inciting incident and something that's going to happen and change it, that you're desperate too. This is where you're like, oh my God, something has to happen to help this character in some way, right? On and on. He's like, that's it. That's all you get. And then they're fighting there, these terrible heroes. They're blowing up the bridge. It looks like everyone's going to die on the tram. And then all of a sudden, we need hope, he screams. And then there was a wind. You get 2 full pages of it before Superman finally shows up with the splash. But look up in that, you get, this is him when he's in the machine, Morty. Okay. This is that whole thing here. And suddenly there was a wind, look at the panels, plenty of room. No, not a wind, a blur of motion, bending of steel of their weapons, and the changing of the very course of the mighty river below, and even the bystanders freed themselves from the calendar. They knew, we all did. We knew and we remembered. Look up in the sky there, plenty of room. And then you keep hitting it. He had not turned his back on us. He stands in the sky, faith rewarded. He has returned, and all of a sudden he has a terrible vision of Superman and Armageddon. Dear God, the threat of Armageddon hasn't ended. It's only just begun. You realize the twist is Superman comes back and his faith is here, but wait a minute, is Superman going to bring the end of the world? Same structure as Palooka. See what I'm saying? Same structure. You get what you asked for, twist the knife with the plot right there. Oh my God, holy shit. Do you know what I mean? Superman's going to be the agent of doom. Oh no. Oh, I got what I wanted. I'm a hero. Wait a minute. No, I'm not. Oh my God, I'm a villain. That really similar structure, totally original, different stories. But that, you see how that's drawn out? That pain there. He sees Superman. Superman says no. And it's not just straight from that to the bridge. It's every hero not playing a part anymore, or playing the part in their own way. Flash protects his city, Batman uses robots, but no togetherness, not doing stuff visibly for humanity to inspire them to be better. All of that hitting, making that character feel worse and worse and worse until they say, I need hope. And then in that moment, oh, you have the machine to transform me into a hero? Slow build, slow build. He sees himself, Morty, now if we're back in Palooka, sees himself as a hero, sees everybody cheering for him, sees, you know, his life as it could be, sees the whole, and then you twist the knife, bang. You see what I'm saying? It's just that. It's just that slow emotional build, a little bit stronger, a little bit. Just goes a little too fast and is a little too speculative in Palooka at the end. That's it. You guys see what I'm saying? Does this all make sense? I'm gonna give you a second.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. All
Good.
makes sense.
This is how I work. This is the way if you give me your story, this is what I do. You see what I'm saying? This is the way I break something down to try and show you all the stuff that I think is working, given what the story is about, what it's going for, and how I would sort of heighten it just a little bit to make it a little bit better in some places. Okay. It doesn't mean that you have to. You could totally disagree with me as well on everything. But this is the way I work. Okay. All
I have
right.
a question from KG Ming. Is this the kind of feedback we got from Scott for looking tonight? Is that what we should expect from a really good editor, or is that not really their role?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, a teacher is slightly different than an editor in the way that, yes, I mean, that's what I would hope you would get it from an editor. I really do. I do. I would say, you know, it depends. Like, it depends it depends what you're working in. If you're a superhero editor, not really, because your superhero editor expects you to get it as, like, yes, small things they'll tell you, I think this could be stronger, that. But a lot of the time, what I'm trying to say to you is try and find friends that can do that. Try and find people that you trust that can help you, because by the time it gets to them, you want it ironed real close, you know, mostly because they're so overwhelmed. Superhero editors and licensed editors have so many trains to keep on the tracks that it's hard for them to then go back and be like, hey, could you do this? They'll say to you if something's really off. But the goal is try and use people you trust around you. You know who I used every single day? Every single day he used me back. Tynan. The two of us spoke every day for years, every day. No shit. Like, we used to joke. I was like, how am I ever going to live not calling you every day? We spoke all the time. We still do. I mean, I just spoke to him this morning. We talk all the time. Like, I talk to him every couple of days. But I mean, we used to talk story all the time. Every script he did, I did, we traded all the time. I trusted him. I still trust him more than anybody as a writer that I trade with, you know. But that said, you know, we don't need each other that way. Like, when I'm doing independent stuff, especially, and not superhero stuff, like, you know, all the stuff that we've been doing, I'll show him Book of Evil and be like, is there anything I can do? Or I'll show him, I'll show him when it's done, the first issues and that. He shows me stuff too. But, you know, that was my editor, was us trading stuff. Josh Williamson was another one, trade with Lemire, you know, Charles, like we would really trade a lot, like all of us, you know, and be like, what do you think? What do you think? Kyle, what do you think? Back and forth, back and forth. So by the time you get it up here to the editor, you want it, like, I mean, this story is where it would be when it goes to an editor, sure, you know what I mean? But you're not going to get an editor that's teaching you 3-act structure stuff like that, you know what I mean? They're just going to be like, this beat needs more, this needs more. They're not going to explain why even necessarily. Hopefully they would, you know, but I'm just saying, don't rely on that. Not because they don't know it and they're not good, but because the more you can take off their shoulders, the better, you know. If you're doing it in the indie world with an editor you hire, like, for example, when I work in Best Jacket, Will Dennis, I do expect that, because not that I don't need that sort of level of intensity, but you know, he'll tell me, like with Book of Evil, we went back and forth about something just yesterday, And it was great. It was like, you know what I said to him? I said, listen, if you think it needs X, then I'll do X, and then he looked it over again and was like, I think if we do Y, it'll actually, and I was like, great, you're right, let's do it. So in that level of like, when you have an editor you've hired independently, then you can expect anything that you guys decide is your relationship. Like for me, my relationship with Will is, yeah, everything. I want him to look at make sure everything is, you might have somebody that's just looking for copy editing. It's what you want, Anyway, sorry, that was a long answer. Let's get to Ben and Max's story. This is a short, okay? So it's called The Cold Dark Secret of Titan Station. See, this is where I love working in this zone, man. This is where I feel best. You know what I mean? Okay. So, like I told you, without going back to that chart, most shorts, either if I'm doing a short that's a teaser or a trailer, like for a series I'm doing, like if, for example, when I did a witches short, because we're bringing back witches, we have some really big news about witches soon. I'm very excited. In the new year, we're going to give you some really big news on like all kinds of stuff with witches. I can't wait. When I'm doing like a short to preview a series, it will often be the cold open, or it will often be it will be something that's very much at the beginning of that first act, because I want you to be like, holy shit, what's going to happen? But if you're asked to do a self-standing story, you're not usually going to pick that. You know what I mean? It can work. Like you can, if what you want to do is show somebody going off to set off into the world, because that's the call to action is the point of the story. Like they've decided to overcome something and go venture out. Sure. But generally most shorts take place somewhere around the climax, somewhere in Act 2 to Act 3, around the All Hope Is Lost, like emotional epiphanies, and recap a lot of things that have happened before. That's what this story does. That's what the other short I'll show you does for me, and so on. Most stories do that. The other short I did show you, the Batman one about the photographer, it does that too. Joker does that. The story I showed you, or I gave you that I did Joker, they start at a point of climax or of All Hope Is Lost or something, and then recap what's before. You know what I mean? All right. So this story, we're up in the middle of the Arctic. What would you do to protect your deepest, darkest secrets? Would you sacrifice everything? At Titan Station, Antarctica, one of the coldest places on Earth, we have a secret, right? That's great. Titan sits, I was already hooked. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is like a suspense, I love the art. The dialogue is really specific. Titan sits 2 miles above the ancient subglacial lake. We drilled down and reached for waters. The first humans ever to do so. What we found was not what we expected. I'm Elise Mercer, the station microbiologist. How's the latest sample looking? These microbes are amazing. That sounds kind of gross. Mark, you've got to see this. Look at the amount of blah, 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 waste product. And then he says, that sounds kind of gross. And then they kiss. This is Mark Frazier, our glaciologist, and also me, my fiance. We met last summer at Amundsen Scott. You'd be surprised how much romance there is at the South Pole. That's a really nice line. So, Dr. Mercer, how about lunch? And then they get called in. Amitra runs Titan Station, is also our medical officer. She spent time as a flight. All this detail is good. You're building a world. This is a world building, right? World building. Great here. Literally one of the next panels. So first, here comes the inciting incident of this story, but we're not anywhere near the inciting incident. But here comes kind of the twist. Has anyone heard from or seen from Chief Engineer Avengi? Sorry, I'm going to butcher that name. But the chief engineer goes missing. There's a joke. He's what about, is he on the running track? No one runs outside when it's 70 below, dude. He's Russian. I don't know. What about the drilling chamber? And then it cuts right to narration. We look, but he doesn't turn up. Everyone is strangely calm about it. That night, we all get together and watch The Thing again. I love this detail. It's by far the most popular movie at the South Pole, right? Homage, but also just like, I believe that would be true, weirdly. Later, the cook disappears. He was there watching The Thing with us, and then he was just gone, right? Something is happening. I can feel something changing in all of us. This is all good. This is ominous, right? Ominous. Mark and I discuss leaving, but we can't. We have to protect what we found in the lake. Now I'm intrigued. This is suspense, right? Here we go. A few days go by, a heaviness has come over Titan. I walk in on Amitra and the security chief having an argument. What about the footage? I've taken care of it, Joel. Hey, I just wanted to make a call. Sorry to interrupt. Elise, please come back later. So stuff is going on behind the scenes. We're getting a sense of intrigue, all of it. I love this detail too. Karen and Britt, our two meteorologists, launched their weather balloon. It's not a task I envy because it's -70, but they're always having fun with it, but they never make it back. Their last weather balloon roams the stratosphere, sending us data, and then it's gone. Now it speeds up. 2 more engineers disappear after replacing a winch. All great detail. A week later, Anya and Daniel go. They played music for us. It's quiet now. All this is great. Building. You're speeding up, right? It's speeding up in a good way. Mark barely responds to me when we're alone. He's losing whatever battle is playing out in his mind. I can feel it calling me also. I'm afraid of what will happen next. Today is Amitra's birthday. I bake her a cake, which is so weird, right? Everybody's like missing. It's just the 4 of them left. And something now is like clearly demented with this place, right? It's only 4 of them left. And they're still kind of getting along in this weird way. Like it's not like terrifying and horrifying and everybody would leave. Amitra tells me she will be gone in the morning. She's been deleting the security footage and locking down comms. After she's gone, I can do whatever I like. You and Mark are good people, she says. I hope to see you both again. Mark and I have our last night together. The fact that they can be romantic in this situation is so scary. Everything is like building dread. That's the feeling. Dread. All of it's great. I don't want to accept what is going to happen next. I feel tired of fighting. I can't remember what I was like before the lake. Right? Mark leaves in the middle of the night and I let him go. I'm the only one left. And then she goes to Titan Station. She tells everybody to stay away from it. She goes down and we see what she found. My mind in a cage. I'm so scared. I don't want to do this. This is what we brought back from the lake, the cold, dark secret. You know, it's like some Lovecraftian thing they brought up from the bottom of the thing. We thought if we kept it locked here, it couldn't hurt us, but we were wrong. It reached into our minds and wouldn't let go. We should have never gone down to the lake. The ancient things should have stayed buried. The secret should have been left alone. Nice circularity going from the secret at the beginning to the secret at the end. This is what you wanted, isn't it? She dives into the mouth with it, the end. Okay. Great, short, scary story. All right. So what's it about? The beginning. What's it going for? Let me go back to the beginning. Well, it says here, what would you do to protect your secret? Would you sacrifice everything? At Titan Station, we found a secret. Okay. So on the one hand, it feels like it's about these people who are essentially, they found this thing at the bottom of the lake and they're trying to protect it or protect the fact that they found it. But as it goes forward, we realize they're in the grip of whatever weird trance this thing has put them in. So it's about, to me at least, the things that it's almost about like, 2 things. I mean, what I'm getting at is one of the things that I would say in terms of sort of fixing the story a tiny bit. Sometimes James and I, when we talk, we'd be like, everything is so good with this piece, but it's almost like it needs some minor heart surgery. That's the way that I would talk about it, or him. It's almost like laparoscopic surgery where it's like, everything is so good that it doesn't really, there's just something a little bit like a tight arrhythmia to the heart, right? Slight, tiny thing. You know what I'm saying? And so it's very important to fix because it's crucial, but it's so tiny because everything's working so well. Okay. Everything's working so well. So the thing I'd say here is almost the reverse of what was going on with, the Palooka. Okay. In Palooka, what I was looking for was to take the hope, the thing dangled in front of Morty, and make it a little bit more painful, like what he wanted there, pull it out a little bit more so that he was more the perfect character in that moment to be offered this thing in this painful, terrible way. With horror, the monster is usually an extension of the great fears of the main character, and usually the writer in some way too, right? But the main character. In drama and superhero stories, it's the hope. So what I was saying was Palooka, I wanted him to hope for this thing a little bit more right before he gets screwed over by getting it and then having it be the other thing. Here, I'm kind of looking for the character to fear the thing a little bit more that's the monster in this story. So what I'd say is the things that are working well, given what it's about for me is right now is a little bit, it's a tiny bit opaque. It could be about 2 things. It could be about the dangers of keeping a secret. That's one thing that I think it's going for. And the other thing, weirdly, is almost like, it's interesting to me that it's also about love. And it's about, I love the line about how, you'd be surprised at how much romance is up here. And it's almost like this group is like a family that's just dwindling, and they're all up there together. And it's this strange kind of communal feeling, even as it goes away. So I'll give you two versions of how I would strengthen it, given those things, okay? Depending on what I'd say to Ben, who's here, is Ben, whichever one you felt was more, and it might be a third version, it might be your version that has nothing to do with anything I'm saying. But I'm just trying to pluck out the two strains of DNA that I think was going for and say, oh, okay, let me say, if it was this, let's strengthen this thing. If it was that, let's strengthen that thing, okay? So the two things that it feels like are a big theme of it are secrets and like love, okay? If it's secrets, then one other thing I was going to say is the things that are working really well, the idea that they're constantly deleting stuff, they're keeping a secret, but also I'm getting the sense of intrigue that they're erasing stuff there. They're not telling each other things. People obviously are going missing in all of this. We don't know what they found in the lake. There's a building danger about not, and they also don't talk about the fact that people are disappearing. So everything hidden, everything beneath the surface feels like it's accumulating to some horrible epiphany. That's great. The dialogue is really strong. I think the details you put in are really strong. Everything, the world building is really strong. I believe you. You have details like Scott Edmondson and microbes and the waste detail, all of it. You're doing your research. It feels good. If that's what you're going for secret-wise, then what I'd say is I think you could strengthen that in an emotional way. Like, here's my big criticism. I feel as though it could be narrated almost from any character up there at this point. And what I really want is for it to be from Elise's standpoint. The thing that makes her different is that she has a romance, it seems like, with Mark. Is it Mark? Is that right? Mark. And that they found love and that. Right now, outside of those details, it's hard for me to kind of pick her out as somebody who's different than other people up there that you could have picked, okay? But if she's somebody that has a secret, let's say you're not supposed to have romance, you're not supposed to get together, and these two people are keeping a secret and she's pregnant or something like that, and there's a secret they're keeping from everybody. And that idea is she doesn't know how she's going to have any medical help up there. She doesn't know what she's going to do. There's no doctors, there's no whatever, that kind of an idea would create another parallel sort of reason why a story about keeping secrets at all costs, is Elise's story. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Are people saying yes or no? I can't see.
Yes, and I agree.
Okay, I'm gonna see so I can see your comments. All right. So my big issue right now with the story, not big, because again, I loved it. I loved it. If it came out the way it was, I read it and I was like, I love this story. It's great. But if I'm taking it from where I think it is to where I think it would be, that's if it's about secrets. The other thing it could be about, which to me is equally interesting, is love. Now, I like the idea that the monster in some way is really unexplained. But if, let's say, you zoom in on the idea, and the thing I'd say is you actually sort of double down on two ideas within the first couple panels, because it says, what would you do to protect a secret? So I think it's about secrets, but then it doesn't really go back to the secret idea emotionally with them, as it would if they were pregnant, as it would if they were hiding their romance, as it would if secretly she wasn't in love with him anymore and she didn't want to tell him, even though any secret she's keeping would do the trick. See what I mean? Any emotional track you put her on or him on or anyone on, that's the main character, would heighten that emotionality, raise the stakes, create that the double helix of like plot and emotion. If it's about love, take out the lines about secrets. It's surprising how easy it is. Imagine starting like this. You'd be surprised how much, how much romance there is at the top of the thing. You know what I mean? And you go right into dialogue. Have you seen the thing about the microbes, the waste? That's disgusting. And then they kiss and whatever. My name is this. This is the station at the top of the world, blah, blah, blah. We have community here. It's funny. A lot of us are outcasts. We haven't found a lot of family before in the world, but we're all together. You know what I mean? And you start it that way. They're a group that loves each other in a way, or not, but they're up there for months in the cold. So they get to know each other better than they get to know their own families. And then slowly they start to disappear one by another, but they don't care. It's like, that's okay. People leave all the time, but then we keep them in our heart. We love them. And you're like, oh my God, that's at first you're kind of like, oh, that's sweet. And then the third and fourth people disappear and you're like, they love them and they don't go out looking for them. It's like, no, we love it, I love you. And what you realize is that the love they're feeling is the love that this creature is instilling in their head. So they don't worry about it. They don't think about what it's doing and making them, get eaten by it. And so it disappears one after another until it's just these two people left that are engaged and love each other. And he's like, tomorrow I'm going to leave you, you know what I mean? And leave you. And she's like, that's okay. I'm so glad you are, bye. I love you. And then he goes, he's disappeared and she's all alone. And she's like, and that's why I found I found the love of my life up here. And, she goes and she sees the thing that her God, this thing that came out of the thing. And she's like, I know something isn't working right, for me, but it's, all the pain, all the loss, everything from before, it's all gone. Like, I love it. So, she loves this demon God thing that she's about to feed herself to. And that is creepy as fuck to me if you did it that way too. Do you see what I'm saying? It's two tracks. You could go either way. I'm just taking the pieces that are there and trying to extend them into the strongest version of what I'm, you know what I mean? Of what I'm seeing in your work. Now I'm doing it in a way where there's not a lot of subtlety. I'm trying to do it, hit it on the head to just show you the kind of math of what you could do. And then you could pull back from the obviousness of what I just said to any degree to make it so that it's slightly more subtle. It's much more subtle. But right now, the problem that I'm having with it is that Elise as a character doesn't seem to be wrestling with the idea of secrets on an emotional level beyond the plot level, or with love beyond the, and again, this is a tall order for 8 pages, man. This is like, again, I thought the story was fantastic. This is just literally how I would, make it just click one notch stronger together in that way. Does that make sense for you guys? Do you know what I mean? I just want to see, like, just tell me if you're just type in quickly if you get what I'm saying. You know what I mean? And if it would strengthen it in that way for you. Okay, cool. You see, that's what I mean. Right now, emotionally, the character doesn't quite connect to the terror that exists in that lake. It could be any character in that thing, almost, you know what I mean? Pretty much. But I want the character that's terrified of, secrets, or is keeping a deep secret that's then reflected in the monster. Or I want a character that's so happy to have found love up here, and love with another man, love with a community. And slowly we realize that love is actually corrupted by this thing in some way, so that her greatest love is this monster that's taken over her mind and everyone's mind. That again, just, it goes up the ramp emotionally. Right now, it's a little bit more plot, great sense of dread, great sense of ambiance, great sense of world building, everything working great. It's just, again, a tiny heart surgery. You know what I'm saying? It's important. It's beating heart surgery, but it's like just a little bit, All right. Yes, that's exactly it. You want a character whose personal arc is tied to the plot arc. Yes, exactly, Jerry. That's what I'm saying. You said it better than I could. Okay. So, and yes, Jarrell, that's why I picked the closet. So let's look at that for a second, and then I'm going to invite Ben in. Okay. Now the closet, not a short. I'll show you the short that I did if you want, and I can show you why I think I could have done a better job with the same thing a little bit. Like if I wish in my short I had added a few lines that basically did the work that I'm telling you, Ben, in this, to strengthen a tiny bit as well. It's very hard, you know what I mean? It's shorts, but anyway, all right. I'm going to pull up the closet really quick. I didn't pull it up yet. Hang on.
They should all be in the same Dropbox.
They are. They are. I just, oh wait, because I'm already in it. Let me see. Wait, was I already sharing it? I was already sharing it, right? Oh no, I wasn't. I am. Wait, where'd it go?
Oh, just make sure you minimize the 2 things that are in front of it.
Hang on, I'll do it again. Sorry, guys. Hang on, I'm gonna get there. Here it is. I'm pulling it up. And there it is. And I'm going to share it. It was on the Kingdom Come thing. Here we go. Closet. Okay, there it is. Thank you guys for sticking around. I'm so glad like we have no attrition during these classes, basically. It makes me so happy that you guys don't think I'm just boring you. Okay. We're not going to look at this whole thing, but this is sort of an extreme example of what I'm talking about. In length, obviously, it's the opposite. It has plenty of air, plenty of oxygen, so much room. It's a slow build story. Look at this. The bar, no dialogue. James takes his sweet time. It's funny. I thought you moved out to Los Angeles or something like a month ago. And he's like, Portland. Yeah, you're thinking of our goodbye party. Here he is. What you learn is he's supposed to be getting packing tape for his wife, and instead he stopped in to drink. And the bartender's like, all right, yeah, moving stressful. But then he keeps drinking. He keeps getting one more and one more and one more. And then he goes on to, drinks. And there's plenty of silence, which is great. It shows you how long he's there when you know he's supposed to go back, right? Just one more, okay? I'll say it was that the store was out of tape. You're the boss. And as he goes, he starts complaining about how he wishes he was young again, how every time he goes back up, he fights with his wife. And he was supposed to go find a psychologist, this child psychologist for his kid who keeps having nightmares about a monster in the closet. But he didn't think it was worth it because the place they're moving to, the kid's bedroom doesn't have a closet. So what's the point, right? And then he's like, the guy tells him a story about, you should pretend it's unicorn piss water. And that'll make the kid believe that's what his sister does with her kid and so on. And he's like, oh, really? But all this time I'm thinking to myself as it goes on, he's not going home. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. So there's a tension building of like what this character, panel after panel, drinking. Just one more and then the check, okay? All right, this one's on me. Happy trail. So he's still doing it. And you get back and here's the kid, right? So cute. Poor kid. Looking at the closet, right? And then he comes back. His wife is, please, I can smell it on you, the alcohol. They start fighting. Right? He pretends he tries to do the unicorn piss thing, but he's drunk, so he screws it all up. The kid is basically like, I know it's not unicorn piss, it's just water, Dad. And he's like, look, fine, there's nothing in the closet though. And then he goes like out, and as they're fighting in the thing, they're fighting, we're going to start a wonderful new life together. It's not worth it. That doesn't let you off the hook. Yell, yell, yell. Here we are. And like, look how slow it is. Look, closet gets dark. Right? Okay. Now that's all we need. Like, it's a super creepy it's a 3-issue short. You should read it. But the point is that story is sort of an extreme example of the thing I'm asking for here in a short, which is very hard to do in a short. I get it. But as a kind of a goal, the idea is that character in the bar from go, you get all the emotional pathos. He doesn't want to grow up. He's being a bad husband, a bad father. He's convincing himself it's everybody else's fault. And he doesn't get the psychologist for his kid. He's resentful of his life. He doesn't want to admit it, but he just wishes he wasn't a father, all that stuff at once, right? That thing manifests as this monster in the closet that's terrorizing his kid and eventually pulls his kid away. And takes away the thing that he thinks he doesn't want, but really does want, in some way. That's what I mean. That plot arc is really sewn like a shadow onto that character, that there's no way that story, just think about it. If that character wasn't there and it was a kid looking in the closet, it'd be scary. It'd be like, oh, that, because the design is scary, but it wouldn't have an impact the way this has an impact. This is scary because ultimately I relate to that guy in some way. Everybody feels that way sometimes. You know what I mean? And so you feel culpable for that monster coming after your kid. You relate to it. It terrifies you. All that. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm saying. I'll show you my short really quick, and then I'll talk to Ben, and then we can take any questions from you guys. Does that make sense? Do you guys have anything you want to add to what I was saying before I jump into my thing? Is there anything, Ty, that you think I should jump in that I missed?
One sec, checking through.
Wait, the monster represents the father? The monster, well, from that issue, the idea is the father's resentment the father's anger, the parents fighting, basically the trauma and the ugliness the father feels, and the fighting and all of it is creating this monster, calling this monster, kind of, engendering this monster's presence in the closet. So the idea is, it doesn't need to be any one specific thing either exactly. It could be any of those. It could be interpretive from you. But the feeling you get reading the story is the negativity happening between this guy and the wife, or in this guy internally, because he's the wrong one from all of it. I mean, everything he does is wrong. If I was the wife, I'd be really pissed at him too. All of that is causing this thing that he doesn't believe in to kind of, come out in the closet. Oh, it might exist. The monster, I'm not saying the monster doesn't exist. Somebody's saying, again, none of this is all literal. This is, my interpretation is, the monster is real in the closet. It's a horror story, but the monster is almost a reflection in some ways of the guy's sort of anger and resentment and the ugliness between him and his wife at this point. And, that in that way. So the idea is, what would the inciting incident? In this, we don't have an inciting incident yet. He's not to it yet, because the main character, the father, isn't what I just showed you isn't, he's not aware of anything yet. So there's no inciting incident yet for him in the things I just showed you. Okay. Also, just so you know, like in Titan, you see, if you were pulling it out as a full 120-page story, you do the whole thing, right? They arrive up in the Arctic, they start drilling, if you're doing the love one, they all get to know each other, the romance starts. They're not supposed to have romance, but guess what? They're all starting to really get along. They find something, we don't see what it is. People start disappearing. It gets weirder. You see what I mean? All of that, you do the whole build up to all of it, Anyway, so with that story, really, it's taking place after people start going missing. It's cutting out the whole beginning where they found the monster, where they come up there, where they meet, all of that stuff. The inciting incident would be when they, find the thing under the lake. The act one would be when they decide to, keep it there, but think that there's no consequences to it in some way. And they start their romance and like that, and you go on from there. So what it is it's kind of recapping that stuff, but the main part of the story is happening around the act two section, All right, let me see.
We had one question. Someone asked, so is the character's personal arc directly tied to the plot arc in both of these cases?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it should always be in some way. And, the character or characters, plural, like personal arcs, should be tied to the plot. Again, I when we did emotional arc and plot arc, and if you go back and watch that class, I try and get into this in a lot of detail. But the emotional arc is always what's driving your story. Plot is a function of emotion, where you can use plot however you want to drive that story forward, right? So what you're thinking about is like, I need to hit the beats that are in that structure, that 3-act structure, are all emotional arc beats, except for the inciting incident. The inciting incident is the only one where something comes into the story and presents itself to your character outside their control to open up a journey. The end of act one, where they set off, that's a decision. That's, again, I've used this example a million times, but it's the truth. In Titanic, people get these things mixed up all the time because the plot things usually happen right on top of emotional choices in big blockbusters. The inciting incident usually comes with, the end of act one usually comes with a big bang of some kind, and point of no return is. So in Titanic, the inciting incident is she meets Jack. The end of act one is when she meets him at the clock. She decides she's going to leave her family and go with him, whatever. The point of no return is not when the ship hits the iceberg. That mirrors it. But when she sleeps with him and decides she's leaving forever and she's going to go be with him. They're emotional decisions. And I use that example because you could have all of Titanic, like I said, happen before the whole thing could happen before it hits the iceberg if you were making a drama without the action. The whole thing could happen if you were making a high action, crazy film after the iceberg is hit. So all of the plot is a function of how you want to tell your emotional story. If you want stakes to be here, if you want stakes to be here, if you want it to be fast, if you want it to be slow, if you want there to be multiple twists, if you want it to be quieter, that's plot. Plot is all malleable in service of emotion in that way. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? None of those beats are like plot twist beats. Those are all emotion, 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 emotion. So plot really should always be in service of the story you're telling emotionally for your characters. Okay. It doesn't matter. We don't have to look at, you can look at my short on your own if you want, the Conjuring one. The only reason I did because it was another short. It's a horror short. And I can show you the one thing I wish I had done in that short was it's about a kid that steals a coin from a dead person's mouth and on a dare from other kids. And the warning is that if you do that, the ferryman that coin is for the ferryman and the river Styx. And if you do that, the ferryman will follow you your whole life. And the kid does it and the ferryman does, and people keep dying around him his whole life. And he finally is now on a mission to return the coin to the ferryman, and he's tracked it down after years as an adult. So check it out if you want. I'm proud of it. It was only a 6-page story, so I had to do it in super compressed form. But I do wish that at the very beginning I had spent 1 minute with the kid talking about how he was always afraid in some way, or he always felt, invulnerable. Nothing bad would ever happen to him when you're a kid, and that. So he wasn't afraid of taking the coin. Or the reverse, it could have been he knew deep down he was afraid of everything. And so he did this to prove to himself that there was no such thing as, monsters in the closet or ghosts or anything. So he did it to prove it to himself, and he's glad he did that. I didn't have a chance. I should have done that. I could have done it in lettering and like 1 or 2 things, and it would have just ticked it forward like that much more. I still am really proud of the story and love the story, but that's it. Just one tiny line or two, just poke it up the tiniest bit. You know what I mean? Just that little same thing. Why this character? Just a little bit more. You know what I mean? So anyway, let me invite Ben in also to talk about it a tiny bit. Ben, I see you there. I'm really excited and super grateful to you, Ben, for letting us use the story. I love the story. I hope what I said made sense to you with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for reviewing and critiquing the story. Great notes. I typed out notes while you're talking and while folks were commenting. Some great ideas there. I struggled really hard with trying to solve the problem with what you were kind of alluding to, how to tie the protagonist's emotional arc to what was happening, plot-wise with the station and the monster. And when I finished the comic, I submitted to an anthology. Like, I didn't quite think I had gotten there. I thought I'd gotten close, but like some of the notes that you just gave me, I was like, that would solve the problem, right? Like if I implemented that, I could really take it to another level. But yeah, 6 pages is tough, man. It's like a tiny little puzzle that you have to really like put together.
No, I totally get it, dude. I like completely. And I mean, like, again, what you were able to accomplish and the confidence with which you did it and the space you gave everything and the creepiness, it was super original and weird and fun, all of it. Like, it was a real standout. I mean, please keep in mind too, like the reason that I am using these stories was because I thought that there were so many strengths to both of them that the few things that I could talk about being improvable in a small way were obvious because there was so much working right. So,
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it gave me some great ideas. And, like I said, there's a potential solution to a problem that I struggled with on this one. It's something like, it's a work I might actually like expand into something longer down the road. And, everything you just said, I was like, that's the path to do it.
I'm really glad, man. Well, again, I loved it, and I appreciate you sharing it with everybody and everything. So, again, and I'm here for to talk anything else you're working on, and whatever you'd like to share. I'd love to take a look.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, so let me ask you guys this too. Is there anything general that I did, I spoke about, or anything I spoke about throughout the whole class, technique wise, craft wise, anything that you guys have questions about 3-act structure, anything I mentioned, or even general questions outside of the thing that you want to ask that are craft related, in that way. Your comments were great. This format, you see what I'm saying? I enjoy this more than I enjoy talking about just published stuff, because I feel like it really gives us a chance to get to know each other. And I feel like I genuinely feel, I know this sounds weird, but I feel more confident doing this, even though I could fuck it up and get it wrong with somebody's stuff and be like, oh, I have the wrong take. This is where I love this. I love trying to look at story mechanically and figure out what it is that we can do to improve things just a little bit, given what the writer is going for, and the artist, but what the writer generally is trying to accomplish with it. So this is what I love. This is, and letting people in, All right, so I like the structure. Wait, sorry, hang on. Wait, Ty, it's going too fast. You have to help me.
Oh, sure. Well,
Sorry.
I have one question on structure from Lyndon Radchenka. How would Scott structure a single page short comic?
Say that one more time. A
Lyndon
single
Radchenka.
page. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
a single page short comic.
Wow, that's really hard, man.
I think he meant like single page, like not like double, like single pages, like for a short story.
Oh wait, what do you mean, like it? Not a comic one pager? I've never had to do a one pager.
Or just like, how would you issue like a short comic, basically?
Well, I mean, like the shorter it is, the more it has to be a single thought. You know what I mean? Like for me, if it's a 6-pager or an 8-pager, you have time for like one twist or one point. So, you don't have room for the kind of like, well, it might be this, but it's that, but it might be that, so I try and really zero in on what is the emotional epiphany that the character is going to have, or that the reader has based on the character's experiences. So for example, in that Batman story that I did a while ago, or I'll show you this, in the horror one, the Conjuring one that's here, the whole story takes place as he's hired a cab to take him to the location where the coin that he stole from the woman's mouth when he's a kid exists, and he's tracked it down, and the cab is taking him there in the rain in the middle of the night, and he doesn't know it's addressed in the wrong side of town, and he's headed there, and he's telling this story to the cab driver. You know what I mean? And so where we are in the story at that point is we're at the end of Act 2, headed towards the all hope is lost moment, essentially. Do you know what I mean? Or depending on how you see it, it could be the, Act 3, right about the climax. It's similar. Like you could have a revelation at either one, but we're in that zone where everything that leads up to it has happened already, and it's all being recapped. And he's telling you it. He's saying, I'll tell you why I'm on this, because it's almost over. And he tells the story of how he stole the coin when he was a kid, and how he did this, and how his whole life, everybody around him died until he finally believed in the ferryman. And it took him years to track the coin all over the world. And now he's here, and he's finally going to get it from this address. And he gets to the address, and it's like a smelting factory. And he realizes the coin was melted down and he can't get it anymore. It's gone forever. And he's like, no. And he's in the rain like this. And as he turns, the cab driver is the ferryman standing there saying, whatever you'll, that sort of thing. And so for me, the structure of a story like that usually takes place at the moment of emotional or plot revelation in some way. And again, the climax can have emotional revelations that change things. Generally, the Act 2 ending, where everything devastates the character before they get back up, is another place you can do it. But the climax is kind of, climax or that are sort of usually the two places that you can pick up from and then recap stuff. So the shorter it is, the more I go for like the most piercing moment. Like if I was I'll give you an example. If I was doing Empire Strikes Back, the moment that you would do is I'm your father. You build to that. It'd be them fighting and being like, my whole life I've waited for this moment. He's my enemy. He killed my father. Blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And then you'd recap it from there if you were doing it as a short. If you were trying to encapsulate that whole thing in some way, or if you were look, it depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to tell a story about like the power of the Force, then you would not do that. You would do Yoda, or you would do whatever. Like, I don't mean to say that's what you should do. I just mean, usually when you only have 8 or 9 pages, your goal is to kind of hit the most emotionally piercing epiphany of the whole thing, and you go for that. You know what I mean? In some way, it doesn't mean you have to. You might decide, you know what, I really just want to show Luke growing up on Tatooine and that's it. That's fine. Just introduce your character. But, understand you only have room for kind of one emotional twist or turn. So it's either the inciting incident, ends it, the act one ends it. Try and think of those it's a good way to think about it, Lyndon, and then I'll stop about it, is look at that 3 act structure thing when you're doing a short. Think about what those beats represent. The inciting incident represents a new opportunity. The end of act one represents your character making a decision to set out and change their life. The point of no return is generally a decision they're making, like the end of act one, but the stakes are a lot higher, where it's like, if I go forward, nothing will ever be the same. And it's a crossroads, but they're heading off to do more stuff. The end of act two is where they're, especially in a horror thing, where they're devastated by a truth that comes out about themselves that makes them feel they'll never be able to accomplish what they're doing. The climax is generally where you're at a point where everything comes to a head and you're facing off with your worst fear in the form of your villain or your nemesis or any of it, and then that's it. Which moment is the one you're most interested in telling for the purposes of your story? And then you focus on that, and you can figure out if you need to recap the other ones. If you're doing one that isn't the opening, you probably have to kind of fill in context. But which one feels the most resonant to you out of those, for the purposes of, if you only give someone a glimpse of your story in that? Are you going to give them a trailer? Do you want to give them the climax, the moment that represents everything you're going for, whatever it is? I hope that's helpful. All right, what else? Ty, you pick questions.
So I've got a bunch once. Are there pitfalls that are easy to fall into when trying to service the emotional beats within the structure?
How do you mean? Like, what do you think? Let me see. Service emotional beats within the structure.
Is there emotional things you sacrifice when you're trying to fulfill that structure of plot? Or are they still connected?
Well, the structure is emotional, is the thing I'd say, is what you keep in mind. Like, the structure isn't plot. So again, the only beat that's plot is the inciting incident. So the climax is the climax because your character is facing off with the big fear or big hope of the whole story. That could be a quiet conversation if it's a drama. It could be telling the person you love them. It could be, a quiet moment with a estranged relative that's been the bane of the character's existence for the whole thing, like, whatever. So it doesn't need to be something dramatic and plot, heavy. So it really isn't. It should never feel like the emotional stuff or pitfalls. It should feel like the plot stuff is at your disposal to figure out the kind of story you're telling. Like, again, if Die Hard wasn't an action movie, you change the plot around and he's going to the Christmas party and they just have a big fight and don't get along. There's no robbery. I mean, that's that's the story. Whatever you're telling, that's how you decide plot. Plot is, if it's an action bombast movie, and that's what, if you feel like the story you're telling about this family reuniting is really a story that needs those high stakes, and that's what appeals to you, is emotionally, I feel like I want everything to be set against the backdrop of the most deadly and frightening circumstances possible, go for it. And then you need plot that's like, oh, I need a break-in, and I need the thieves, and I need murders, and I need fighting, and I need he's isolated and his feet are bare and the glass, you know what I'm saying? Then you need all of it. And then you need the other cop. And if you say to yourself, that's what I mean, Titanic could be anything, it could be anything you want. It could be quiet, it could be even louder and crazier than it is, it could be whatever, so it's plot is all you have an idea for a story. I have an idea and I say, what really appeals to me, I'm really intrigued by this idea that maybe like I'll tell you like this, like, so the story I'm doing with Raphael, right, the duck and cover one, I was just like, I had this appeal. I was like, well, what if kids that hid under that stupid thing about kids hiding under their desks for a nuclear war, what if that was true and they hide under their desks and they survive? And it's a plot thing. And I'm like, I don't really know why I like that. And it takes me a while to unpack it, right? And I unpack it and I think, I really like it because it leaves these kids followed this dumb advice and then they survived. It's a world where it's just children trying to solve a mystery that seems so far beyond them. And then I'm like, well, that's what I like. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a plot that's all about mystery. You know, why these desks? Why did this happen all over the world? I'm not going to create a story that is, horror. I'm not going to create a story that has huge adventure in it. I'm not having them leave. I'm going to keep them there, and it's a mystery, and it gets more and more tense, like a closed box. So the plot is your way of getting at the material most penetratingly. Okay. If you feel the best way to do that is to have high stakes, go for it. Have, terrorists and bombs and aliens, and do it. If you feel the best way to get at that material, the scariest way, the most exciting way, the most hopeful way, is to not have those plot elements, wipe that slate clean and set it on a boat in like at a resort, or set it in a hiking trip, or set it, at the school play, or whatever it is. Like, plot and all of that is just a way of you deciding the best way for you personally to get at the material that matters to you of this story. You know what I mean? I can say to myself with any story, like with Duck and Cover, oh, you know what? I want it to be over the top, guns and action, cars and this and that. But I wouldn't do that unless that was the best way to get at that core thing, which is, how do kids make sense of something without adults around in a better way than we could, ultimately? Meaning, I want it to be a story where the kids realize, this advice was right and they were saved for a reason that has to do with building a better world on the other side. And if that's the case, then I don't want all of that other stuff. The way to get there is a ticking clock mystery about figuring it out. Similarly, like We Have Demons, to me, is a story all about a kid that feels like, she's lost faith, or has a version of faith that never worked for her father or anything. And she has to find that again. And I was like, that could just be a story in a church, but I was like, no, the way that I feel it works, if it's me and Greg, I want to do it again, the biggest stage possible, with like cosmic consequences in this. And that's the best way to get at that story and make it the most emotional for me, is to set it on the biggest stage and to make a battle of good and evil that lasts millions of years, So it's that. Again, sorry to keep going. Plot is the stakes. Plot is just the level of volume by which you're turning your story and what feels right to you. The emotionality is the whole structure. The emotionality is the structure of it. Okay. That chart I showed you is all emotion except for that thing, again. Everything, yeah.
We have a question from Tony Adams, who asked, with a book like The Closet, which is 3 issues long, how do you decide how much of each act is in each issue? Like, do you have each issue being its own act, or do you have, acts 1 and 2 in issue 1? How do you decide the amount of length arc-wise is it going to be each issue?
Well, I mean, like, it depends what you want to do with the story. So The Closet is a special, I don't want to spoil it. You have to kind of read the whole thing. And I want you to buy it. Like, I gave it to you all watermarked and whatever. But I only have 3 issues on a bunch of my books at Comixology, and they're slightly longer issues, but like We Have Demons is either double-sized or whatever. So but when you have 3 issues, it's a hard structure. It really is. It's actually, like, honestly, out of pretty much every structure, it's my least favorite to work with. Not when the issues are longer. I like, with 48 pages an issue, it comes out to be 6 issues essentially, so even longer. Or wait, 48 pages in issue 3. Yeah, exactly. So it was great. It was like, it's plenty of length. But 3 issue arcs, when they're standard size, is really hard, because if you have to get to kind of the end of Act 1 kind of thing, or you have to kind of start where that's all already happened and recap it. It's a hard thing to fit into. But I'm trying to think of a time I've had to do it recently, more standard. People don't generally do it also because it doesn't make for a good collection. It's too short. It's half the length of a normal collection. So you really usually get a book that's significantly longer, like, again, like 40-page 3 issues, it's a weird, it doesn't it's kind of not like a novella, but it's like a weird form. It'd be hard. The truth is, it just depends on the story. If you told me I had to fit in 3 issues, a giant bombastic event, that's very different than you telling me, well, I'm going to fit a story like The Closet in 3 issues, which is very quiet, and can breathe in 3 issues and still be different. So it just depends on like what the story is and how to, if you gave me the story, I would show you how I would break it over 3 issues, but each story has its own priority. So I can't really give you a format for that,
I mean, Book of Evil, you went like what, 40 pages for the first issue. Next issue we're talking about maybe even more than that. So it
Yeah,
all depends, right?
48 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like that book that's really fun for that, like the structural stuff. If you want to look at it, like the first that goes end of book 1 is the inciting incident, but it's far in. It's like, 30 something pages in. And then the second book, they go on about 20 pages into that on it acts into the wild. So there's about 28 pages, but it took them almost it takes a long time for them to leave. So Act 2 is the one that gets most compressed in that book, but if because it's prose, it's easy to do. You'll see. But I wanted to really build the characters and the world out. So I think it works. I think it's one of the best things. I'm really proud of that one. But yeah, if you're interested in structure, that one, I'm pulling some tricks in the Act 2 part.
This is a great question from Oscar Irving Sue Hoffman about The Closet. How do you, or in this case James, how do they write the script with just panels and no words? The artist understands what must be drawn before showing monster.
Oh, you say, I mean, like that's all just conversations and description with the artist where you say silent panel, I want a few silent panels. If I'm saying when I'm saying that to anyone, to Francesco and Night of the Ghoul, you'd say, as he sits looking at his phone, Francesco, we want a couple panels to build suspense where you see old people creeping through the halls behind him or scampering across the ceiling behind him. You know what I mean? We're not sure we just saw what we saw. Or here it would be like, to drive the point home that our main character isn't going home, let's spend a couple panels showing him drinking so we feel the drawn out time too, to the artist. So that's how you do it. You just describe it to them that way.
All right, I think we have time for one question.
Maybe one more, yeah.
Kevin has a very important question. Do you still get excited to see your upcoming books and previews?
Oh yeah. Oh my God, I'm more excited now. I mean, Ty will tell you. Like the thing I'd say is the stuff that I'm subjecting your work to here, he'll ask him. Like I do this on my own stuff all the time still. I'm always still afraid when my stuff comes out that it's, I've left something out. It's not as good as it could be. If you're not afraid and feeling that way about everything and excited about everything coming out, then you should take a break and not do it, honestly, because it's not worth it if it's not feeling that way to you, in my opinion. Like he'll tell you, like Book of Evil, I literally, how long did I spend on that? That's
a while.
Like, and I don't, like, the truth is, like, I don't need to at this point, not because I'm so good at it, but because like I've done enough stuff that I have it built into my mind how to structure a story generally okay. And I could do it, and know that it's solid enough to put out, but that's not the goal. The goal is to do what I'm doing with you guys to make sure everything is the best thing I've ever done. If you don't feel that way when you release an issue, then you shouldn't do it. That's my opinion. And maybe that's an asshole thing to say, but if you don't feel that way, I've never, ever, and he'll vouch for me, or James will vouch for me, everybody, I've never let an issue out the door that I didn't try to make the best I could till the very end. Like, and I like, my friends tease me, but that's a lot of them are that way too. That's why we're friends. Greg is that way as an artist. James is that way 100% as a writer. That's who I gravitate towards, is creators that are constantly trying to make sure that they're doing their best work that just tops the work they did before and challenges them in new ways. So for me, what I'm subjecting your work to is what I subject my own work to and ask my friends to look at my stuff with all the time. So you should always feel excited when you see stuff in previews. You should always feel nervous when it goes out the door, always. I don't want that to go away as much as it sucks. Like when I'm like, oh God, did I fuck this up when it went out? Did I forget this? Is this the one where they realized I can't write? Like all that, you know, you always feel that way, but it's good. It means you care, right? It means you care. So I don't know, you know. Any last rapid fire thing before we have to go? I got a text from my wife just now that's Em and Quinn coughing like crazy, can't sleep. So, just finishing. So
Can we see some scripts side by side with the finished work in the future?
oh sure, that's really up to the yeah, I mean like whatever, you know, if you guys want to, if Casey and Ben, if you guys want to submit the scripts, we can post it in the archive class. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. You know, whatever your format, your process was, you can tell me offline. You don't have to say anything now. But when we post a class, we'll do that. And again, we've got great stuff. I have a story by a writer named Omari, who I really love, for next time, one of the longer stories. We still have to pick a short story. But there's great submissions, but keep submitting stuff too. We keep reading stuff all the time. So please, if there's anything that you want to submit, this is how it's going to work. Every class will be that like this way, where we'll have a general, you know, I'll always use published stuff. I'll always use kind of technique stuff and try and show you what I'm talking about beyond just talking about the work itself, but always framed this way. It's always, we're all in it together to make each other's work better. So I'm the same as you. That's the whole goal, is just us as a community trying to make our stuff as good as possible. So. All right, you guys. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you. This was a blast. This was even better than I'd hoped. I appreciate it. And remember, if you want, this is not me. I'm not trying to shill, but I got a lot of complaints the first time we closed the Black Jacket Club, and we are opening it tomorrow. And it does allow for more office hours, like back and forth, you know, and that stuff. But we only have about 20 spots max that we can do. So, you know, if you want it, just jump on it quickly in the morning. What time are we doing it?
We're doing it in about 25
Oh,
minutes.
in about 25 minutes. So again, no worries. Don't, you know, there's no pressure, but you know, if you like the class too, and you want to give it as a gift to somebody, that's awesome. I want to do this as long as you guys will have me. So I really enjoy it. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you soon.